Today I am speaking with Evelyn Krasnow, CMO of Fernish, a premium furniture and decor rental startup that markets a little differently than just another premium furniture and decor rental startup. Evelyn previously served as a marketing leader at Bird, where she learned the power of hyper-local community marketing. At Simple Human, where she found disruptive ways to change the way people think about everyday items like trash cans. And at Belkin, where she discovered that just because a cable or surge protector isn't glamorous doesn't mean it can't be beautiful. Evelyn takes a story-based approach to marketing, thinking about the stories of people who are going through life transitions, say a breakup, or working in a new city, and how she can align the Fernish brand with their needs, wants, and desires. Evelyn Krasnow, CMO of Fernish, welcome to Top CMO. And what I like about, especially about how you think about marketing Fernish, is this notion of you are relevant to your target audience at these moments of transition. That you're a direct-to-consumer, premium furniture rental service that has a lot more flexibility, a lot more available inventory, trying to solve traditional problems in furniture rental. But because you are relevant when people have transitions, you specifically try to market around those use cases and those transitions. So would love to hear more about how you think about that.
No, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for explaining so much of our business. I think one of the things about moving is it's super stressful. You're packing up boxes, there's memories, you're lugging big, heavy things, and the concept of having to move without even lifting a finger can be exhausting. So for Fernish, what we're trying to do is find people at this point where they're already maybe a bit stressed. They might be very excited, but getting them to think differently about how they're going to go through this process. And that's kind of a difficult thing to do because furniture is a pretty considered purchase, and moving is something which is often not very spontaneous, although that's changed a bit over the past couple of years. So finding people at the right time, telling a story that's compelling, and then really driving home a very different way to think about outfitting your home. People are used to buying and putting things in a truck and then moving it from place to place. And we're really saying, forget about all of that. Go online, find the things that you might like for your home, a chair, a dresser, whatever it is, a bed, and then we'll deliver it for you, we'll assemble it for you, and you don't need to lift a finger. So it's a really great service, but it's not a part of the way most people think about their move.
Well, and so here's three use cases that I know you think about in your marketing. So one is you just broke up with someone. Well, that's not fun. Now you got to deal with all the logistical, challenges that come through that, particularly if you were living together. Two, you're newly engaged. So first use case, you're kind of pulling things apart. Now you're trying to put things together and in some kind of order. And there's like I laugh a little bit. There's like the clean person, the dirty person, the organized person, the unorganized. I think the classic scene in when Harry Met Sally. I don't know if you remember that movie where it's like the wagon wheel coffee table that she doesn't want. She's like, if we ever split up, I never want that wagon wheel coffee table. You can have it. So there's that. A third is that you just get a new job. It's an exciting time. You're traveling. You're going to a new city. You're in a new place. It's a new opportunity. You're hopeful. Maybe you don't want to focus on that. So how do you think about that? How does that practically affect your messaging if people come, to your website or a landing page or see some type of material, or if they're engaged in a campaign? How do you sort of message these moments?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that is such a quintessential scene of like, not in my house. I do not want that table. But I think one of the things that we found, we partner a lot with influencers. And for us with influencers, we work really hard to find people who are going through that. We've had people who are just mid breakup, where it's like, I have a month to find a new place and I don't want to see anything of his ever again. which I can completely appreciate and identify with. And I think there is, to that point, there is a lot of kind of stress and literal and physical baggage with it. And there's also a lot of expense. So I think, for us, we're starting, with payments as little as, just $140 a month. So it's not that much. So you can have these more bite-sized moments. And for us, we really, if we're just talking about the furniture, you're not really getting it. So for us, with these influencer engagements, we actually need to show the truck coming. We have our own warehouse and delivery teams, and we show the people coming in the Fernish shirts, setting things up, assembling them for you, so that like the stress and the heaviness of what you're going through at least won't be something that you have to do with moving all of your things.
And so what you're saying is it's like some of the value proposition actually isn't just the furniture. It's done. You're sitting on your couch, even if you got a cold beverage in your hand and it's done. I mean, that's part of it, but it's actually the journey in getting there. You need to show that is, I think you're saying, heightened by these moments where you can make a huge difference because it's a moment of sort of great change for someone that you can come in and leverage.
Exactly. And I think that's a service that most people see as separate, whether it is, hey, my friend with a truck and yeah, I'll get you a 6-pack of beer if you can help me move XYZ. I definitely did that back in the day. Or you're imagining ordering something from a store and these individual items that are then coming to you at different times and scheduling all of these different deliveries. This is really this one-stop service where you're getting everything you need and you're getting it all delivered and assembled for you on a day that you're really picking that works for you. But that service piece and really telling that story, it only resonates if you're actually going through it. I mean, if we take maybe a better example, you just got a new job, or you're just, partnering up with someone for the first time. Then there's, I think, all of that excitement happening and this kind of newness to this place and this location. And still, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and knowing that you can pick what you want, pick the day. There's just a lot more control over something which may actually end up being uncontrollable. If it's, let's say, a gig that you're getting for 6 months, cool. Get everything from us. And after 6 months, you can decide you want to buy some of the items, or we'll pick them up and you never have to see them again. We'll refurbish it and bring it on to the next person who wants them.
So how does that work in terms of the mechanics of influencer marketing? Do you do it in-house? Do you have an outside agency that you use? Do you just got to vet a ton of influencers and just ask the question, like, do you think your boyfriend or girlfriend is an idiot? If so, we have a campaign for you. How do you find those people?
It's really funny. Sometimes people will proactively say it. I mean, what's nice is we have a lot of people who are kind of very happily newly coupled, but we also have people who are in the throes of a breakup. And I think it does feel really nice to be able to come to their rescue. We just did a really nice engagement with a rather large influencer, Justin Baldoni, and he had an uncle who was moving for health reasons and was moving into a home and just wasn't going to be in a position physically or mentally to furnish a home. The family wasn't. So that was a case where you could sort of surprise someone and say, hey, you're moving and you don't have to lift a finger. Everything is done for you. And I think when you have this kind of authentic story of helping people out in a real time, it resonates much more meaningfully. We do have people who reach out to us because, candidly, they're influencers and they want new things, which is an amazing part of being an influencer. And you can get a lot of it and look great having all of those things. And it's definitely an aspiration for everyone. But if they don't have a real story to tell, then the use case just isn't there. Like you can definitely like just get a single item or a room, and there are moments where we'll do something like a refresh, but most of the cases it's someone's moving to a new city, they have some kind of a change of life, or a relationship status, that makes us a very, very compelling and helpful addition to that experience.
Well, it almost sounds like the TV show, like Extreme Home Makeover. This is like Furniture Edition, right? Where it's not so much that the house was just there, but it's like all the inputs to get to that makes the house like the payoff. And if you want to have the payoff of this, you have to sort of see the journey to get there, because that encapsulates some of the value and that makes it sort of special.
It's the backstory. It's exactly what you said. It's that backstory. Yeah.
And then how does that trend? Do you notice when you tell these stories, you give more of the context for it? Do you notice a difference in sales, leads, conversion, like hard business metrics? Do you see it perform differently?
I mean, of course, traffic. Of course, the more meaningful the story, the higher the engagement. Fortunately, there are a lot of people when there's, we just did one last week where people were like kind of newly living together, and the boyfriend made like a special appearance, and that was really nice. So I think people also want to share in the joy of you finding someone. And I think when you see engagement, we do sometimes use promo codes, and we can track some sales that way. Certainly, traffic. But I think it's the comments. Like for me, when people are actually taking that extra effort, because I think it's amazing to have 10, 13,000 likes, something like that on a piece of content. But when you start seeing comments, 100 comments or something like that, especially for a startup brand like Fernish, there's a connection there. That people can relate to. And that I find very reassuring that, okay, we're telling the right story here. People are getting this.
So what makes for a good influencer marketing campaign? How do you connect emotion to what could be perceived as a commodity service like rental furniture? I'm reminded of the branding work and activation campaigns we've done at Top across the beer, wine, and spirits industry. It's rare that we'll market the functional benefits behind the product. Instead, we create differentiation or white space by using the product to tell a powerful story that is simple, surprising, and significant. Let's talk about some other tactics, channels, storytelling methods you utilize. One that I've known you've utilized is the takeover of the New York City subway, which at times, sometimes it's just an ad. You sort of see ads, and sometimes there's certain brands that have really like embraced it, and it's almost like it became part of just their persona, right? I'm thinking about brands like Casper for mattresses, or other things like that, where you just like see them everywhere, and it's almost like it's more than just an ad. It's the takeover part is the significant part. So talk about how you thought about that and why you felt that was a good way to invest in a particularly, it sounds like, important market for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, so much about like furniture and moving is like heavy and expensive. So one thing we wanted to do was really convey this sense of lightness and freedom. So we had zillions of ideas, and then we kind of landed on like literally probably the most simple idea, which is like, what if the furniture just floated? What if we just showed like this weightless kind of couch and tables, and really emphasize this concept of like free your home. And then that would allow us to really talk about the value props of hassle-free, risk-free. You can return something at any time. Commitment-free, free delivery, all of those props that come with the Fernish offering. And I think another challenge we have as a D2C brand is, at this point, we don't have a showroom. We don't have a physical location. So one of the nice things about a more architectural out-of-home campaign like the New York City subway offers you this kind of permanence, especially at a time when you're moving from place to place. You're getting this sense of, oh, okay, like it feels more like an installation. It feels a bit more architectural than, let's say, a traditional billboard. And we really wanted to kind of literally cement ourselves in the minds of commuters that we were a good solution. And I think the subway also maps really perfectly to our demo, which tends to be, 25 to 35-year-olds, young professionals, people who are at a point in their career where they're moving around a bit. So that's really great. And I think also the subway, at least in my experience taking it, like I'm open to some distractions. I'll notice what shoes people have. I'll notice someone is eating, I'll look at the signs up there. I mean, Casper did such clever things with copy, and riddles and things like that. So you're kind of open to looking at fun campaigns in a way that you might not be as receptive, in other parts of your commute or during your day.
Was the objective of this pure brand awareness? Were you trying to get conversions from it also? Were you trying to drive people somewhere, or what was the key metric, and was that metric successful?
So yeah, I mean, that's a really smart question. And we tried a lot of things. So for sure, brand awareness was the top goal, but of course, conversion is another part of it. We actually worked, because we did everything in-house, we actually put a bunch of different QR codes on different pieces of creative. So we could see, like, are more people scanning the flying sofa or the
Yes.
the coffee table?
Yes, if you like
and it
your
was
coffee
kind of
table or your sofa, yes.
just to know, like, does this image work? Because I want to be able to use this again, and I'd ideally like to do the one that's more effective. And we did have a DR code as well. We had a promo, which was helpful. I think for me, if I see anyone scanning any ad anywhere, outside of a Super Bowl ad, which is absolutely brilliant. But, I don't know how many times, like, I scan a menu QR code, but I'm in marketing and I don't know how often I scan something. So to me, anytime we're seeing like hundreds of scans on a piece of creative, it made me really happy. And same with the redemption of the subway code we used. I mean, we were kind of basic. We used the code subway, which seemed like easy enough to find. But I think we saw a massive increase in traffic and a very, very, very nice uptick in sales, which was fantastic because we were just launching the New York market.
I know another different type of local activation that you've done, which we've also leveraged in different ways from our clients, is leveraging a really big event that's probably too big and too expensive for you to actually leverage it directly. We're talking about the Super Bowl, or maybe the NFL wants you to call it the big game, unless you've licensed it or something like that from
Right.
them. But the big game, the Super Bowl, you did something in LA, focused on the LA Rams, that was giving discounts based on the score in the year that the Rams won the Super Bowl. Talk about that and your thinking and sort of this notion of local, but also leveraging bigger events, bigger brands than you are now to get some additional resonance and engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I think every marketer's dream is like, what are you doing for the big game, right? And as a startup, I can just tell you, like, we are never going to be able to afford, a Super Bowl commercial. So how do you kind of use that moment to maybe be a part of the conversation as a smaller brand? And I think we really did have an opportunity. Fernish is based in LA. Even though the Rams weren't technically the home team, they are the home team of LA. So we just thought, hey, what if we had some fun and we did a tiered discount by the bigger the margin that the Rams won, the more discount you could have on your order, but you had to place your order in time for the Super Bowl. And I think, as we talked about before, you usually are not buying furniture or even thinking about renting anything unless you have a real need, but you might have one coming up. And I think the idea of getting talked about and having people think about this clever and fun way to buy furniture, which again, talking about that heaviness from before, is usually just like you're going to a store, you're negotiating what's going to fit, it's thousands of dollars. Like, what if the whole thing is just fun? What if it's just this big giant bet? And we had an absolute blast with it. We got a ton of attention to it. We didn't have like massive conversions, but we did have a tremendous amount of brand awareness. And I think it's to be a part of the cultural conversation for a time like that and try to make yourself relevant and play with really the big guys. It's a challenge, and it's amazing when it works.
And I'm reminded of a campaign, a couple of different campaigns we did. One of them is for a client. We did the first ever real estate sale on the blockchain, and we were trying to figure out how do you make that more. This is a few years ago, and it's sort of interesting, engaging, kind of a new concept. And so we managed to track down a house that was kind of special. It dealt with the NFL because it was one of the Green Bay Packers party houses, which is basically across from Lambeau
That's amazing.
Field. Literally this row of houses, right? And if you could like sell one of those, it was going to be transacted on the blockchain and just brought this whole other element. People kind of wondering like, man, what's it like to live at one of those houses? That must be crazy. But you're across there. And then it was tied into this first ever transaction. So I think, and I think those that come from, I think CMOs come from different tracks. The ones that come from some type of a PR or earned media track will tend to think more like this, right? When you say like, we'll tend to think of like, well, how do I join the cultural conversation? What can I do that's relevant? How do I piggyback on someone else? I once knew a CMO who called it opium, which is actually OPM, other people's money. How do you leverage other people's money to get more push from your own, particularly when you're small? So how do you think about that? Does your team think about that? Like sort of this almost PR earned media muscle. How do we leverage that? Because we have to when we don't have the budget of someone much bigger.
I love that. I mean, I love opium. I mean, I've heard it called trend jacking, whatever. I think you're right that people who have that PR background, you kind of grew up with those sort of like old school editorial calendars, like there's set times in the year that these are the cultural conversations that are going to be, going to be happening. How can I get in on it? It's got to be a part of your DNA as a startup because you need other people's money, both the VCs to fund you, but to help propel you. And I think, I do think like the example you're using, there's just something fun and cool about it. Like it puts you in this category of really coming up with unusual ways to make connections. And I think that can feel truly disruptive and help you stand out. Early on in the days when I was at Simple Human, we were trying to just be taken. Simple Human makes like really fancy trash cans and dish racks.
I think I have a couple
oh,
of
good.
Those. There you go. It's very nice. I have those, and then I have the because I have 2 kids under 2. Then it's like the fancy diaper trash.
Oh
can,
yeah,
right. Which
yeah,
I have that as well. So it's like trash can row there at the side of our living room. There. So yes.
Well, when we were first, when I was first starting out there, like people just like literally thought we were trash, and I could not get earned media. Like it was, if you were beautiful tabletop or servingware or something like that, or
I'm trying to pitch Architectural Digest. You're like, let's do this. They're not interested in our trash can. So what did you do?
We actually, I had done a little advertising in Food and Wine magazine, and I knew at that time they had this big sort of event in Aspen where all of these sort of like fancy chefs would come to sample like beautiful wines from up and coming vineyards and chefs. And I was like, wait, I had this idea because that was the audience I wanted to get in front of, were sort of these bougie foodies and these like literal tastemakers. So I had this idea that we could get space in this tent and just serve like really amazing, messy stuff. Like we had messy barbecue and messy tacos. And then I had like an automatic soap pump, but it dispensed sanitizer. And then I had these beautiful trash cans. So people were sort of around having these beautiful glasses of wine and then like this like little tiny, like the most perfect hors d'oeuvre anyone has ever seen. But, a day of doing this, you're kind of hungry. Then you get to me. I've got these like huge messy tacos and barbecues. People were like lining up, but then they took one bite, right? And it's a disaster. Like it's a complete mess. I'm like, oh, no problem. Would you like my my automatic soap pump? And then here's a napkin with my brand name on it. And oh, don't worry, here's my beautiful trash can. And people just thought they got such a kick out of it. It was super clever. Like we ended up really standing out, kind of because we were trashy and different, in our own way. And I think to me, like it was, I don't know if it's a traditional stunt, but to me, it's experiential marketing. Is I wanted to get in front of those tastemakers. I wanted a memorable experience, and I wanted to kind of let people think about at that time, you're spending, tens of thousands of dollars to redo your kitchen. But at that time, people still had a $20 plastic trash bin. And we really were like, it was all about upgrading your trash, which sounds
anyone can have a beautifully remodeled, designed kitchen and all the things, but you're only as good as your weakest link. Come on now, up your trash game. Yeah. There you go. I can see that, yes.
But I think, again, it's about kind of getting, it's the same thing as the subway. It's like getting people at the right time or, getting people when you can kind of get in on the attention of people I could never normally afford to reach. And even if I could afford to reach them, they honestly wouldn't give me the time of day. So I had to find a way to like, to have this meaningful moment. And it really worked beautifully. I think we had a ton of engagement. It's probably also the campaign that I think I gained a lot of weight over that weekend. I ate a lot, but it was definitely worth gaining the followers and the pounds, both worth everything.
I'm reminded of the axiom by renowned Japanese tidying expert Marie Kondo, who says your feelings are the standard for decision-making. Specifically, knowing what sparks joy. To determine this when tidying, Marie asks you to pick up each object one at a time and ask yourself quietly, does this spark joy? So as marketers, how do we help our audience of potential customers pick up our product or services, so to speak, and discover the joy within? How can your product or service bring joy at exactly the moment when the potential customer needs it? According to Evelyn, that central question informs a wide variety of marketing channels at her disposal. Well, and some of it is the storytelling. I mean, you do it at Fernish in the sense of all of the context, the lead up that goes into this, like kind of this crossroads moment where your brand can make a difference in Simple Human. And I guess to some extent when you were at Belkin as well, and for people, I think a lot of people know Belkin, but is making everything from cables and surge protectors and little gadgets to go with your iPhone. It's about finding the beauty or the hidden beauty in something that maybe in a category isn't, always messaged, right? Certain categories, fashion, luxury, will do beauty. But if you can, as a marketer, anyone can do beauty for like an expensive handbag or something like that, or a piece of art. How do you do it for a trash can? How do you do it for a surge protector that just isn't quite the eyesore? It sounds like some of your career has been sort of finding those other qualities of the brand or products and being able to bring them out.
I mean, I see myself a lot as like an underdog. So I think I really do champion these sort of like really beautiful products that it maybe at first glance are unloved, or what is great about them is just simply that they work really well. And maybe they're unobtrusive. Something just fits. I mean, there's so many things that we encounter every day that just work. And they make our lives easier. And we don't always appreciate the design that goes into it, the thoughtfulness that goes into it, the engineering that goes into it, the logistics, the operation, the customer service teams, all of those things that are helping to bring that product experience to life for us. And I think there's something really deeply rewarding as a marketer about being able to tell those stories meaningfully. And sometimes it's something as simple as like as a really elegant diagram on a package. Sometimes it's how you flesh out like an exploded view of a product on a website or through some other sort of digital experience or video. But I think being able to tell those stories, I do think you sort of look at objects in a new way. And I think there's something really fun and there's something really meaningful about that. Like I like it when people get credit for good work.
Well, and there's in our vernacular at Top, our agency, we would call like at its essence, some of marketing finding what's for us is 3 S's: simple, surprising, and significant. A lot of marketing is how do you simplify things down to the essence, and it has to be simple because people got to take it with them, right? And they're not focused on you. If you're at Simple Human and you're marketing trash cans, they're not thinking about trash cans all day, right? They're not thinking about these sort of things all the time. So it's got to be simple. It's got to be surprising. So just like you sort of, kind of the influencer experiential sort of stunt of here's this like lovely trash can. We're giving you a funny use case to use it right away that you manufactured for them. We've got to be surprising. But then in the end, if you're simple, if you're surprising, you've also got to say something significant for your brand, because simple, surprising is not enough. Then you've just like made some buzz. People were like, haha, and they move on. So you've got to do all of that. And if I would say like, I don't know, in my opinion, I don't know if you agree or not, like what is table stakes in this? It's almost like the simplicity. If you can't get it simple enough, no matter how good you do on the rest, it almost can't resonate because it just can't transfer fast enough. Lives are too busy, too much noise. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
I agree 100%. And I love your concept of the 3 S's. And I love that last one too, of the significance piece. I think we talk a lot about authenticity, and that's one thing, but I think it's also like, does it matter? Like, what does this mean? And I think the significant part of it is something that we don't really talk about enough. And I think when you can flesh that out, you really do have this trifecta where you can forge a real connection and I think a real genuine appreciation and a way that people are willing, they're willing to invest more in it.
Well, it sounds like what you're doing in the influencer campaign too is dialing up that significance, right? By telling the story, telling the background, not just have it be a transactional influencer that's like, look at me, I'm on a couch, now I'm gone. By doing that, you're able to actually drive up the significance, and now your product and even the notion of at Fernish, the idea of kind of the commitment, stress-free, don't lift a finger. That significance, what you might miss in the product. I don't know that if I was shopping and being like, okay, I need some temporary furniture because I'm moving, that I would sort of value all of that unless someone showed me that like, oh, wow, like that'd be great. Think of all the stuff I could do with my family, with meeting my new town, my new neighbors, if I didn't have to worry about this. Oh, that's great. So it sounds like the significance part, you're driving that through storytelling, and particularly that context you're creating.
Absolutely. And I think as you're talking, I want to like keep adding more S's. Like I think the storytelling piece, and I think also the sustainability piece, right? Which is a big part of the mission at Fernish. And I think is also a big part of how people are thinking today is like, what is the impact and how is this a smarter choice? How is this a smarter choice for how I'm living, for the earth? And I think, that last piece, that kind of, I guess in the old PR world, what you would call messaging pull through, right? That sort of like feeling that like, oh, okay, like I can feel good about this. I made a better decision. I feel smarter, for having done it this way because I'm not throwing something out. I'm not having to like hawk something on, Craigslist or whatever to get rid of it. Like I'm being, I'm being more mindful. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, I think to certain audiences too, and particularly like, the sustainability piece often comes out when we talk to a lot of brands that are marketing to like millennials or like a little bit of a younger group. And it's usually not the primary necessarily decision driver. Like, okay, I'm going to go get some furniture that's going to tide me over in my big move. Who's sustainable first as their first thing? But you're in this whole part, and I'm just going to kind of like half jokingly pull your story through. You're like, my girlfriend or boyfriend, they're an idiot. They're, commitment phobic. They wouldn't do a commitment. And so now I'm going to go to the place that just lifts the commitment off me. Oh, wow. Furniture. Oh, I can also feel good about now making a commitment to the planet too while I'm doing this. So there's sort of that process of I have the use case. Oh, I'm driving value. And here's a cherry on top that I can feel good about. Like, obviously, Fernish is the choice for me.
I love that, and I think that intelligent consumption piece as sort of like, again, to use your word, like the kind of surprise win after, like, oh, and I feel better about it. It's a great feeling to have. I think the sustainability first piece, actually, that was one of probably my, when I joined Belkin, I came on to launch. It was actually an energy efficient power business. There were power products that had intelligent switches and things like that would turn off to save power, and they cost a bit more. It was an absolute failure. Like, I thought, oh my God, of course, like everyone wants to save energy. Everyone's going to spend more on this. But as a primary value prop, at that time anyway, it was hard to do convincingly. But the storytelling behind it was very compelling. And then through that experience and through the success, I guess, of that failure, I was able to kind of grow my role at Belkin and lead global marketing for all of the other, cables and switches and surge protectors and all of those other pieces. But it was, I think, as a primary message, there are some brands that have it at their core. And I think Fernish, it is at the core of our business model, but I don't know if it is necessarily at the core of all of our consumers' purchase decisions. From what we have found in the data, it's exactly as you said, the flexibility, the convenience, the money-saving piece, and then this added benefit of, and it's good for the earth, that is the pull-through.
Sure. And how do you, when we've talked about, this idea of the storytelling context that sort of lets you experience and understand the value. We've talked about, getting some buzz, some awareness, using our earned media muscles to be relevant. We've done all of that. Maybe as a final topic we could talk about is another trigger for engagement that we can use is being really relevant locally, geographically, hyper locally. And I know you use that at Fernish, and certainly you have campaigns that are like the New York subway that are focused on an area. How do you think about that overall as another driver of engagement, of just being really relevant to someone where they are?
Yeah, I mean that's a really it's a really interesting question, and I think for people who have managed global brands, like at Belkin, seasons are different in Australia than they are in New York, so that's something about what you're showing in the backdrops. I had things at Simple Human where the size of an average trash can in Texas is very different than the size of an average trash can in Japan, and making content that feels...
Is everything bigger in Texas? Is that true?
I would say so. Say so.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Got it. So you're saying it's locally different in these areas, how they experience it, and what the preference is.
And then, Bird, I think, was a great example too, because we were really, that was probably my first experience of really properly hyper local, as like, these scooters that people were picking up and riding had very different regulations, city by city. even different, city by city in different countries. So that was a great experience to figure out what can you do to engage with community stakeholders, to make sure that people really knew how to park things appropriately, what were the rules of the road, and doing what you could to get good compliance and good behavior, and hopefully also greater utilization so that you're really putting these scooters in a place where people can use them, are having fun and doing a job of getting from point A to point B in a way that is, sustainable and enjoyable, and of course safe. And then I think with Fernish, we're not yet a national brand either. So feeling like we are, the service of choice for people in New York or people in Austin, feeling like you can be locally recommended, but also I think that also speaks to having local teams who, know the brand and know the products. Like it's a little bit different. And this is something that this is actually part of the story that I feel like I'm still working on figuring out how to tell. When someone is moving your stuff, they obviously care about it, but it's your stuff. With Fernish, all of our warehouse and delivery people, the refurbishers, like they're furnished products and they're going to at some point, unless you are buying it and they're coming back to us. So they really know how to assemble these. They really are also pretty careful about how they're moving them because they know they're going to have to come back and someone's going to need to sand out that ding. So I think there's also that kind of local knowledge, but that sort of product expertise. And then also I think from a market experience, ideally, knowing even just how many deliveries you can schedule in a day and what time windows to provide so that you can arrive in a time window that makes sense and is as likely for people. And then I'm also a very big believer in like local business partnerships, the same thing we're talking about with local influencers, but how do you, is it okay? I mean, even something which seems kind of lo-fi, but like we made these little coasters that we put in local coffee shops with QR codes that people can scan, just to kind of say, hey, we support you. We know you're getting coffee here. I don't know. It feels nice. It feels like you're a part of the fabric of the neighborhood. And I think when you can do that in a way that resonates with people, they like it. People like local. I like local.
Well, and I think the other thing that you do is if you layer enough of these triggers together, so you're culturally relevant for what's going on, timing wise. You've got, kind of a storytelling trigger or a context or a use case. So you're resonating that way. You have, something surprising that's different that just gives people a laugh or a chuckle. Plus you layer local on top of that. Then, you don't even, anyone doesn't have to, be the driver of everything, but you put that all together, you can get lift through all of that. And then you can turn a campaign that was okay into a campaign that's one, incredibly successful in the market, but two is potentially scalable. And that being the holy grail for anyone who's going to grow, a market who's going to grow locally, is like localize, but at massive scale. Ideally, you figure out a recipe for that, and then you can do that. So, Evelyn Krasnow, CMO Fernish. What I love is you're a creative. You're very creative. You're a person who loves storytelling, which is fantastic. You're a person who is finding, I guess, the beauty in marketing, even in things that aren't traditionally thought as beautiful. So as a final point, what is, for someone else that would love your career path or career track, what is your recommendation? What kinds of experiences, what kinds of opportunities, what should they do for their next 2 to 5 years?
Boy, that's a big one. I mean, I feel like you probably have great advice there too. I'm curious what your advice is. I mean, I think, I think we are all marketed to, throughout the day. And I think you might have experience that may feel like it's not traditional. And I think there's always a way to use it. I think you can always draw on it and find a way to make it relevant. And I think I've also found just in my own career, it's hard, but especially at a startup, you have to remember that, that progress isn't linear. When you're starting out or depending where you are in your career, it's like, hey, I'm on this path. It's going great. Whoops. And the same thing can happen with a campaign. Things are sort of going, it feels like, oh my gosh, we've unlocked the key to the universe. And then all of a sudden, no one's clicking on your ad anymore. Or, something goes awry, or your budget changes, or there's some issue with the product and you have to kind of shift gears. So sometimes progress can be a step back, or it can be a pause. But I think it's still progress. And I think remembering that and drawing on that experience, at least for me, I found it to be really helpful at times where, I might otherwise think, how is this relevant, or how is this going to help me? And I think the more we remember that, and the more we can figure out how to take something away from every experience, the more successful we can be. And I think it also just helps you be more positive in life in general.
For Evelyn Krasnow, CMO of Fernish, storytelling is both an art and the heart of everything she does. If you do this well, you can find the hidden meaning, emotion, and even joy in everything from the latest tech to surge protectors, trash cans, and temporary yet stylish decor. Remember, keep your message simple and don't be afraid to get a little creative in delivering a compelling call to action. And as for your marketing career, Evelyn believes that sometimes taking a step back or pausing in your career can still mean progress. As Steve Jobs once said, you can't always connect the dots looking forward. You just have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. So be an experienced collector like Evelyn, and always find the beauty and joy in marketing, and perhaps in life as well. For Top CMO, I'm Ben Kaplan.